I forgot something.
Hello, welcome. This is Chris. And today we have kind of a unique guest. It's my friend Cyndi, who we've actually been friends for over a decade, or no, almost a decade, and never met in person. And she's known about my work with A Course in Miracles over the years. And about a year ago, we were on the phone. I was just kind of walking my morning walk that I take to the dam every day. You've been along that one with me. And she was saying, I'm doing something this year that's a little different. She goes, I know about A Course in Miracles, but this year I'm gonna live it. I'm gonna do every single day as though the course were true and see what happens later. Because so many people they find A Course in Miracles and they read it and they do the lessons and they like it and it helps them change their lives in meaningful ways. But there's a difference between pretending as though it's true for a year and believing as though it's true for a year and just kind of doing the lessons, and it's not that she had to believe it was true at the end of that year, but for a year she said, I'm just going to live as though it's true and see what happens. And every time we talk since then, she's lit up with more joy and more delight. So I thought I would bring her on and see, what is it like a year later? So Cyndi, that was the conversation. A year later, you said, I'm going to do it as though I believe it. What is your life now, and what's that journey been like between then and now?
I'm getting chills, Chris, because it's so cool because I forgot we had that conversation. You remember, it's been about a year, and I was practicing living the course, and I had owned the book for like a dozen years, and would pick it up occasionally, but never finished the workbook lessons. Never really read the text. I'd read a little bit and say, yeah, of course that's true, and then sit down and give my life back to the ego and do my spiritual stuff. But I was practicing the beginning of last year, and I sat down and handed the day over and asked a question and got that clear advice at that point to call you. And it had been months, I think, right?
It may have been a year or two, because prior to that, I know you'd had some health issues that aren't showing up now. So clearly miracles in that direction as well. So it had been a while since we connected.
But that was so neat. And I can remember reaching out and saying, hey, Chris, I don't know why, but it's time to talk. And we've had a lot of fun since then.
Yeah. Yeah, we have. In addition to being a friend, you've been a business colleague for nearly a decade. And so Cyndi and I have shared with each other and shared each other's audiences with each other and helped spread my work. And I've helped spread her work and, audios and all kinds of stuff. We've had fun over the years. So it's been, an adventure, and we've done more together in the last year since you did start really living A Course in Miracles than probably the previous 8 or 9 years combined. It's been a real adventure. And part of what's been fun for me is seeing you kind of navigate into the Course in Miracles arena with teachers and workshops and what that's like for you, sort of being a little closer to that. And I'm curious, when you decided you were really going to choose A Course in Miracles for a year, and that was that inner voice, what did you do to do that? I mean, did you just read the book every day, or I don't know, what does it take to actually live the course, the way that you've done it for a year?
So I've decided not to, I'm going to answer that last question first and then tell you how I did it, because I'm getting chills. So I know, because when you get through, and I got through the workbook in the year, and I found an awesome teacher, which we'll talk about, and I did all the lessons, and you can do them for your few minutes a day, or just when Jesus kind of tells you to do them in the lessons. But it really comes down to when you decide, hey, we've invested all the time, and anyone on your page, right, has an interest in the course to varying degrees. It's a 24/7 black and white teaching. And the more you study it, the easier it gets, right? So essentially, what you're told in thousands of words, tens of thousands of words or whatever, is that the ego doesn't exist, the world we see doesn't really exist, and your joy comes from stepping back and letting the part of you that's holy, the part of you that knows that you're God, to lead all. And I forgot to turn the phone off. Hold on.
It's all good. While you're doing that, I'm just going to say hello to some of the people on, Beverly and Darlene and Brett and Carrie. Thank you so much for joining us, and everyone who, feel free to write a comment in and say hello to Cyndi or I. We're going to be on an adventure for a little while. We don't know how long it's going to be. Cyndi and I were like, well, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30. Honestly, we don't know. So just wanted to welcome everyone for joining us. And go ahead, Cyndi. Again, you're talking about living it.
Yeah, the ultimate goal, it's crazy because the ego fights this big time. Like I feel, I've trained psychic, we talked about it, trained energy worker, so I'm very aware of energy, and it's really crazy. And there's this internal crazy battle because the ego, the adversary, whatever you want to call, I know the Course calls it the ego, doesn't want us to get this. But essentially, the Course really only is asking you to recognize that your purpose is to save the world. And you don't do that by following the ego. You literally do that by waking up in the morning and saying, here I am, God, what is this little piece of you going to do today? And then step back and follow directions.
Yeah.
Like you essentially get to just rest in God and do what's in front of you. Now, the ego fights that tooth and nail. The ego wants to tell you got bills to pay. It wants to tell you got health issues. It wants to tell you that your 20-year-old children are making mistakes and you got to control them. Jesus teaches us in the Course, I've been teaching people, one of my favorite mantras through all this is, what is it about this that you won't let God handle?
Right.
What is it about whatever your problem is that you aren't ready to hand over to Jesus? The courses, or, what is it that's so important about your flat tire or that bill that needs to pay or the boss that's like driving you crazy that you think falls outside of your holiness?
Yeah, that's so true. And it takes me back to, the teachings that I've shared over the years that are, not exactly A Course in Miracles, but so congruent, and, answering that question is we go back to our childhood, right? We had to do things we were dependent on parents. We were dependent on superiors, authority figures to survive. And that is what built our ego, this necessity to survive. And so growing up, our ego learned very clearly, this is what I have to do. I need to do what mommy and daddy say. I need to get to school. I need to do this. The flat tire is down. If we don't fix it, daddy gets fired from work for being for late. A lot of stories, and I intentionally amplify my energy and move into that because that's that childhood egoic formulation that was so necessary to survive. And yet, as we get older and we realize you don't have to do as much as we think we do, and we don't have to do it alone. One of the things I've taught for years is manifestation, law of attraction. And so many people are like, well, that's not what A Course in Miracles teaches, and that's, and when I come back to it, I go, well, maybe in other views. And I believe, honestly, the law of attraction has been distorted a little bit because for me, when I really tap into the flow, like you said, you ask God, you live in the moment. What I've realized for me is that my will is the same as God's will. And that I am, as the metaphor is, a wave in an ocean, right? And I may be the one crashing on the beach or whatever, and taking those physical actions. But the things when I let go of the ego's desire, right? When the ego isn't running the show, and I really tune in, what I feel is that the things that I want in my heart and this physical body, this spirit, this soul, the things I want are the same things that God wants. Yeah. There is no difference. Manifestation, law of attraction, to me, when we clear away the limiting beliefs and get rid of all the junk in our head, all that's doing is opening up us as a channel to God to say, God, use me. What is it you need right now from me that we're going to manifest together? So to me, when you're talking about people can't let go, what is so important about this and that and so on. It's that childhood piece that got stuck. And now it's up to us to say, God, okay, that part of me was stuck. Let's let it go. You know, what do I need to do today to be the best, most aligned, congruent, loving vessel of, you know, your message, of your spirit, of your will that I can? So that's kind of what came up for me when you were,
and I
you
love
know,
it too.
asking that question.
Yeah, and I love it too, because what I've learned, especially this year, is that the ego keeps trying to pretend that we are the ego. Like the ego in our head saying, I am Cyndi, I am Cyndi, but the ego, I'm not the ego, right?
Right.
The Course literally teaches that the ego doesn't exist, that it's an illusion.
Yeah. Right.
So there's one of the workbook lessons, I can't tell you the name of it, but I love the prayer in it. And it literally says, I want what is not my will to have, and I will what I don't want. And essentially, and then it says, you know, God, you know, heal my mind, straighten it up. Because essentially, if you really pay attention, those loud, kind of angry voices never want what's best for us.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
It wants to control things and keep us separate. And when we sit back and say, you know, I have forgotten what to decide, I have forgotten what I want, then just say, you know, your will is mine, and we step back and allow that energy to flow through us. Man, I went from having no car to a full paid-on car in a couple of weeks by doing very little, but sitting and using the power of the 50, the first 50 workbook lessons, using them as a mantra to every fear that showed up in my space for about 2 or 3 weeks. And at the beginning of that time, I had a car that had almost 200,000 miles in it with a starter problem that just kept getting worse and worse. And at the end of it, I had a fully paid for, not by me, brand new car.
You know, it's funny because, you know, it would be so easy for the ego, and I see my mind already going this direction, to be like, so there you have it. Use A Course in Miracles to go get your egoic desires, right? And that's totally backwards, but I see how easy it is for someone watching and listening to immediately channel that way, because the ego, one of its most brilliant trappings ever is when it finally latches on to spirituality. And it says, well, if you're a good course student, you're going to do your workbook lesson every day. If you're a really good spiritual student, you're going to meditate every day. And then when you don't meditate or you miss a day on your lesson, oh, the ego is punishing. Oh, see, I knew you couldn't do it. 365 days, too much for you. You know, you're not that. And all the trappings of the spiritual side of the ego that also want to move into the law of attraction, manifestation. You know, if you do the course every day, you can get these things. And when I oversimplify the course for me, you know, what works in my life, I oversimplify the course to one simple thing, which is being in the present moment. You know, to me, that's what it is. When I'm fully in the present moment, you know, the alignment, the channel is there. My will is God's will. I can show up. I don't have to ask about what, you know, what the lesson is going to get me. I can just be with the lesson. If I miss a day, I can be with the fact that I missed it, and that's fine. That's what it is. You know, to me, being fully in the present moment is that. And yet there is, in my observation, a value in returning to the lesson, returning to the course, in returning to the teaching, so that when we stray, we come back. Because usually if we're straying, it's because we weren't being present. That's my experience personally. You know, if I'm straying away from things, it's because I wasn't being fully in the present moment, because that's when I go, oh yeah, this is what's real right here, right now, even you and me. So that's just kind of what's coming up for me right now.
Okay, so I have a whole bunch to say, and then I want to go back and tell you how all this really got started.
Okay.
I was reading some of these comments, especially to hear from Susanna, where she was asking, you know, how can you tell what's the ego and how do you recognize it? And I love that question, but you brought something up about manifesting, and there was something very key, like super key in what I went through last July, because what I did is I didn't take the process and my living the course to manifest a new car.
Right.
What I did was I took all my fears very systematically to the altar.
Yeah.
And I use, you know, in another Chris, I'd love this teaching. In another conversation, I could tell you the specifics, but essentially for X number of weeks on my walks and when I was sitting and when I was doing other things, whenever a fear thought came up about how I was going to get places or how this was going to happen or where it was or where's whatever, I took it to the altar. I took it to what I've learned over the past year until the fear went. And then all of a sudden, like it was the craziest experience, all thought stopped. And I can remember it. And I'm sitting on this little balcony outside my apartment and I'm watching some baby doves in a nest because I got to watch, you know, I didn't have a car and I didn't have the money to really go any places. And so for that month in July, I got to watch these doves build the nest, and I watched the babies being you know, really, while I was doing this process, I'm sitting on the porch and I thought it was time to work or to worry or do something. There were no thoughts left. And I moved into this place of understanding that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And that it didn't matter if I got a car tomorrow or next week or 6 months from now, because I was fully taken care of. I didn't think it,
Yeah.
I just knew it. And at that particular process was done, and I watched the unfolding from there. But I didn't, like there was no egoic attachment.
Yeah.
I just knew that if I needed to get somewhere, God would provide the ride. I don't know how to put it any other way, because you know me, I'm a hard worker. I don't just sit and wait for people to do things for me. That's not the way I do things. And I worked the program during that month. Very consciously, and we'll talk about Lisa in a moment. She's my Course in Miracles teacher. She will teach you to watch. There's like nothing more important than watching your thoughts like a hawk. And I was watching my thoughts, and I was watching how my thoughts affected who I was. And that's like the answer to Susanna's question.
Yeah.
Egoic thoughts always are either in the past or the future. The ego cannot exist in the present. The present moment is the only place that exists. The ego is not real, and therefore egoic thoughts are never in the present.
Yep. And, you know, there's two things that really I want to highlight here, because I think it's easy to get lost. One is you talked about the fears that would come up. And that is a very simple sign that we're identifying with the ego, is when we are identifying with fear. And your whole process was you acknowledge the fear and then you just give it to God, you let it go. But the thing that I think is important to note is people often mistake giving it to God as doing nothing. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. Like you said, you're a hard worker. I'm a hard worker. We're diligent. We work for ourselves. We work for God. We work for spirit. We work for the moment. We work for the people watching this page right now and listening in to us. And when we give the fear to God, when we give our ego away, when we land in the present moment, that's when we get truly inspired action that says, go here, do this, do that, where our will, we are an expression of what God is asking of us to do. And sometimes we're going to get tasked with really hard stuff. You know, sometimes we will have to get really dirty with the work we do, you know, get our hands in there and mix it up and do it hard. So it's not like just because we gave it up to God and we say God will provide that we do nothing. That is a really big mistake. And that's, again, the spiritual ego actually trying to say, if you're really spiritual, you'll do nothing because spirit says everything will provide. And it's again, just distorting the truth. And that's what the ego does. If it distorts the truth. So I really want to come back to this point that giving it up to God, being in the present moment, trusting that you'll be provided for is not the same as doing nothing. What it means is we're clearing all of the junk away so that we can be that clear channel, hear the guidance, and take true inspired action that is real, authentic, and continues to be in the present moment. You know, for the last year, my whole business has completely changed. I used to sell online programs and courses and teach people. And God said to me, stop selling. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do next? And God's like, I didn't give you that answer yet. I just said stop. So I did that. I stopped selling everything. And it took me another 3 months of being present, being curious, being open to go, what next, God? You told me to stop doing this. What next? And then God said, give it away for free. And let people just generously tithe and support you. And if they feel, compelled, $1 a month or $5 a month or whatever, but stop selling it. Stop selling spirituality. It's not just for the rich, right? And that's a beef I've had with, the spirituality industry for ages, is it's just for the rich. You have to have too much money to do things and not enough genuinely transformational free resources. And that was the message I got from God. And so for me, this evolved over the last year where I've had to completely uproot everything I've done for a decade and completely think about new ways to do it. And now when I wake up, instead of thinking about what am I going to do to create this program and reach new people to sell and all that, I just think, what am I going to give today? And then I pause in the moment, present, listen to God, and God goes, here's what you need to do today. This is the next thing. And I feel so much happier in the work that I do now, giving it all away unconditionally, than I ever did selling it. And so again, though, I work hard. God gives me the messages day to day. Here's what you're going to do, Chris, to give more. So anyway, that's just a totally different tangent. But one thing I did want to touch on is this idea of spirituality is for the rich. And I tithe every month to the Foundation for Inner Peace to support A Course in Miracles. And most people don't know about foundations. And if you tithe, they have either a general fund or specific earmarked funds. And I earmark money specifically to give away A Course in Miracles. Okay, that's where I personally want my money with the foundation to go. And that means they can't use the money for anything else. They literally can only use my money to give away A Course in Miracles. And I know that one of the sources that was really supportive for you, and you shared this with me, was Lisa Natoli's 40-day transformational journey, which is free. Like, you get
Totally
Lisa free for 40 days. Like, what was that like for you, and why Lisa as opposed to the many teachers? I mean, I love David Hoffmeister. There's some fantastic teachers. What brought you to Lisa and her free 40-day program?
All right, so now we get to tell you this whole story. So
okay,
I've owned the Course in Miracles book for 12 years, and I opened it up. I read, anything real cannot be threatened. Anything unreal doesn't exist. Therein lies the peace of God. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know that's true. And I closed the book and put it aside. Do the first whatever. But I moved into 2018, and I have a mailing list the way you have a mailing list. And I wrote to my mailing list, and I had thought about it, and every year has a focus. And I told them all that in 2018, I am focusing on miracles. And that I found my book. I had just moved, and I'm going to begin the workbook lessons, and I'm really going to commit to doing that. And somebody wrote me back. I have 20,000 people that I write to every week, and I read every response. When people write me, I write them back. We're all one in God, right? And so somebody wrote me, and she said, you have to check out Lisa Natoli's 40-day program. Totally free. And, I'm busy, and there's a lot of things going on, but, when God is with you and God wants you to do something, things light up. So when I get messages like that, I sit and I get quiet and I look, and I said yes, and I went and I found her and I signed up. And the 40-day program, it was about a year ago. It was January, February time period last year that I started the 40-day. And it's a really long sales pitch. And because of where we've been in personal development and online spirituality and all sorts of stuff, I am always hesitant about who's authentic and who's just a really good copywriter and all those things.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Chris, it's really a 43-day program because there's 3 days of prep work. Within 48 hours, 72 hours, I already felt shifts. a clearing, a space, an expansion. Every day there's an email, there's written content, and then there's the ability to connect either through audio, through a video, or a written transcript. Every day you get an email inviting you to, log in to your account.
And that's free.
And there's no selling. Like, you go into this space, and for those 40 days, there's nobody there telling you need anything else. And
that's really different than what other people say to, even in the free programs that most people give away, it's here's the free thing, and I'm going to keep, at the end of everything, look at how much free stuff I gave you, so you should buy my programs and my coaching.
So,
right?
So this is, the Teachers of God Foundation, which is who is offering and providing the 40-day program, and who I now work for a year later because I fell in love with all this stuff. Their focus isn't, they're a nonprofit foundation, right? Their focus is not to put $1 million in the bank or to go on big trips. Their focus is to, is everything that we learn about in the Course in Miracles. It's an undoing, it's a joining, it's an expansion. So I got to be honest, I'm going to be careful here. We don't need anything but the 40-day program. We actually don't need anything but the first paragraph in the Course in Miracles, right?
Right, yeah.
But there is the living in, like, there's a mastery program after that. There is, Lisa has ACIM 365, where she has a teaching every day on the Course in Miracles, not reading the workbook, but literally living it. She's someone who, like, for 20 or some odd years, wasn't anything but a Course in Miracles teacher. She wasn't necessarily living it during those periods of time. She went off and was on some sort of, like, in a community that only studied the Course. She read the book, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. She taught on it. She did the workbook lessons. And then, she woke up one day and decided to live it. And once you get, if you don't know Lisa, once you start, like, listening to her, she is the most authentic, raw, open person who says, you can read it all you want, but until you hold that ego accountable, until you really watch your thoughts like a hawk, until you do this. So the 40-day has everything.
Yeah.
The ego is strong. I got closer and closer to that 40 days, and I didn't want it to end, and I needed more, and I wanted to dive in deeper. And there are other opportunities, but I'm not attempting to sell. I have no desire to sell those other opportunities.
Right. But it's not necessary, because, like you said, the 40 days, it's free and it's real and it changes lives. It's interesting because you touched on something really important, which is, what do we actually have to do to change our lives? Right? That's really what the question at the heart of everything is. What do we have to do to change our lives? And for so long, the spirituality industry has sold us on week-long retreats and very expensive programs, because the more you spend, the more your ego is invested, the more likely you are to do the work and therefore deconstruct it. And it's a whole chain of events, right? But you really touched on something important, which is, yes, there are teachers and teachings that can keep going deeper or different directions. And I've always found tremendous value in having coaches. When I wanted to be a champion martial artist, I found a 4-time world champion to train me. And in my rookie year, I was national champion. I took 3rd place in the world. And that's not to brag, but it's to show that when we have coaches and mentors who align with us, we are able to actually relax into the moment, trust their guidance, and follow in a way that takes us to something true. And this isn't to say that we should be following gurus. That's not really it at all. I think that following the path is very different than idealizing the guru or the teacher. The teacher is just a channel when we're in a true, authentic path. All the teacher does is point us to ourselves and to the truth. And so when we oversimplify, yes, we could go spend out a lot of money on programs, or someone could do something like the free Course in Miracles lessons I give away, 365 free lessons, no strings attached, nothing, for me to sell or anything like that. Now that I give my programs away, someone could do a 40-day journey with Lisa, and I put the link in the comments in case people want to join on that. But it gets even simpler, right? You said the first paragraph of A Course in Miracles, right? And even simpler than that, be here now, live in the present moment. Right? If someone were to want to say, what's the fastest way to transformation, that would be it, right? Every time we go away from the present moment, come back to here, right now, what is real. And that's why things like mentors, coaches, spiritual teachers, the 40-day journey, and so on are so important in our lives, is because it's so easy to get pulled away. I've got this work thing to do, the kids, like you mentioned, the tire, the car, laundry to do, cooking to do. We've got all these things that are real, practical, that do need to be attended to in our lives. And the challenge is we allow them to take us into our head. And then we're trying to solve from the head space instead of dropping into the present moment and saying, how should I move about this right now? What is leading me? And so that's where the 40-day journey and teachers and courses really help us, is because we get pulled in all these directions, and the workbook lessons, they remind us, hey, come back for a minute. Just come here for just a minute, Chris. Come hang out with me for a minute. And that minute is then another minute on another day. And then it's a minute and a half. And then 2 minutes. And that's how Spirit really takes hold, at least in my life. It wasn't like I had some magical enlightening moment and suddenly like my life is fixed. I never had one of those moments. I never felt like my ego instantly dissipated. For me, it's been, first feeling presence for 30 seconds once a week. And then feeling presence and feeling in the moment for like a minute once a week. And then it was like once a day for a minute. Right. And to me, that's how presence and the moment unfolds with me, is more frequently for longer durations of time. And that's why workbook lessons, 40-day journey, coaches, mentors, and people like that make a difference, is because they give us a moment outside of our normal day where we say, okay, for this next 5 minutes, I'm not going to worry about all the things that are pulling on my attention. For this next 5 minutes, I'm here now with this lesson, this teaching that's going to take me deeper into myself. So that's a long-winded way of saying I agree with you and what was coming up for me in my own personal experience.
Yeah. It's cool because, and this helps a lot, Jesus doesn't tell us we need to know. Jesus actually invites us to really recognize that we don't know anything.
Yeah.
But we're told over and over and over again in the Course that all we need is a little bit of willingness. All we need to do is invite the holiness to purify. Yeah. All we need to do is say, I don't know how to stop attacking, but I'm ready to stop attacking. So help me. And we get the help. And so it's really cool for me. So the 40-day, well, like I said, the first paragraph, the more I study the Course in Miracles, the easier the Course in Miracles becomes, because the quieter my brain comes, and I recognize that the truth exists in every line in the Course and in a lot of other spirituality too. So it's becoming easier and easier and easier. And so what happened for me after the 40 days, I needed to go on. There is a mastery program. I wasn't paying my bills every month at that time, but I got, I took what I had been learning through studying the Course and through really paying attention, because the Teachers of God, it's not just the 40-day in their courses. They have live streams. If you go to YouTube and search Teachers of God on YouTube, you're going to find a lifetime worth of teachings. And they have a Friday, they have a Friday Course in Miracles group that they live stream and put on YouTube. So there's lots of stuff. They are an amazing group of people. For me and for the people that are called, what was so interesting is that, and this is part of the teaching in the Course, and part of like that same decision going, what? I spent a dozen years putting this business together and you want me to just give it away, right? So I got quiet at the end of the 40 days in that place. And this, there is an opportunity for a mastery program, and I had no money to pay for it. And I heard an inner stirring that said, go forward. and the courage and the power to trust that voice to say yes within a couple of hours. And again, this is just my story. I believe that the course teaches, the course doesn't, I don't have to say I believe, and I'm not, I really just started studying a year ago, but I'm not studying, I'm living. So what I learned at the end of it is that every curriculum is different, right? So each one of us has our own curriculum. So because I said that I went into the mastery program and did ACIM, and I've actually done every course and studied and swallowed everything that Lisa and the Teachers of God Foundation teaches, was that because that was the curriculum that My Holiness had set up for me. But what was so neat is that the course teaches that when you say yes and you trust, when you really, really trust, then every stone is going to be removed. And literally within 2 hours of my saying yes, my business expenses shifted so that I could, I saved enough to pay 2/3 of the monthly kind of thing that I needed to pay for the class. And then because of the way different things were working, I started to receive tithes that I had never received before. And last month they offered me a job. So my saying yes to the mastery program has
opened up so much.
Opened up the flow in crazy ways.
As you're saying that, it took me instantly back to 2010. I had just started my business. I was out of the corporate world. The cash was not coming in. And in my heart, I felt this really deep wish to swim with wild dolphins. And I didn't know where it came from, because I didn't, up until that point, have a real love of dolphins. I liked them, but I didn't love them. And so to have this wish show up in my heart, I'm like, what's that about? And so I listened, and then I was doing a big product launch and the whole stuff that was, back in that day, kind of cool for selling online products. And an opportunity came to swim with wild dolphins in the Bahamas, and it would have been like a week after my big promotional launch. And I was like, oh, I really want to. God's calling me. And I was like, no, it's not the right time. And I dropped it. And then the product launch bombed. So my income did not explode the way I hoped it would after this whole experience. And then about 6 months later, I got an email from the Monroe Institute, who I had first studied with for my own retreat for meditation and guided brainwave entrainment and stuff like that. And they had 2 facilitators that were going to be teaching in Bahamas along with a wild dolphin swim. And I thought instantly, yes, I have to be there. And I was like, I can't afford to be there. I don't have the cash. And guidance was like, just put down your deposit. The slots are going to be gone quick. You don't have, I knew deep down that this was not something I could wait on even a week. And so my intuition said, put the deposit down. We'll figure it out. So I put down the $500 deposit on credit, because I didn't really have the cash at that time. And I said, okay, what's next, God? And about a month and a half prior to when I needed to make the next deposit payment, a real estate investment that had gone south when I was in the corporate world and had a 6-figure job to fund things like real estate investments. It had gone south, and they just sent me a check for about 2/3 of what I needed to cover this wild dolphin swim. I was like, whoa. And it was totally unexpected, because like I said, the whole real estate industry tanked. And I'm like, okay, God, got it. You got my back. And then here I am, still not sure how I'm going to cover the final bid. I put the final bid on credit and then went on the trip. And the first night of the trip, I'm going, there's something different here. I don't know what it is, but I think, I don't know. So I emailed my new bookkeeper, who I couldn't afford, but I needed, because I knew I couldn't do any of the math myself in my business. I could do it, but it would take me so long, it wasn't worth it. So I'd hired a bookkeeper who I couldn't afford to do my books. And I got an email to her, and she's like, Chris, you're teaching personal growth. You're on a personal growth retreat. This is a business expense. You can write this off. And the amount of the tax deduction I would have received is actually the amount that would have covered the rest of the retreat. And I was like, really, God? Nearly exactly the right amount when you calculate it all in. Okay, I get it. And for me, that was my journey, in trusting something, the guidance. And I think it's important to understand the nuance between when ego is telling us to do something like this and when it's heart. You know, when we're truly in the moment present, we feel a whole body experience and an inner yes that says, this is the path God has taken me on. And that's a very different thing than if my mind had said, oh, I want to go on a wild dolphin swim retreat. How am I going to afford it? Oh, well, if I do this and that and this, I'll get to it. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I do that every day in my life for planning and moving about in things. So it's not to judge that as a negative thing, but the concern I have is when we have those big external desires, it's easy for our ego to try and fixate and say, well, ask, believe, receive, law of attraction. I'm going to go, I want this, I'm going to go get it, without asking, is this an ego desire or is this, you know, God working through me? Is the spirit in the present moment? And so whenever we feel that compelling moment to take that leap, where it's a financial stretch and part of us is saying we shouldn't do it, I'm scared, I always say go for a walk in nature, meditate on it, be as deeply in the present moment as possible, let go, like you said, let go of all the fear, give the fear away, see what's real. And if it's still real to enroll in the program, God will find a way. And if it's not real, if that was just the ego pulling us on another, you know, of its adventures, then we're going to feel like, oh, like I did with the first wild dolphin swim offer that came, I'm like, this isn't the right thing. It's not the right moment. So I just want people to keep that in mind, that we aren't advocating to just mindlessly jump and waste money and do things that you can't afford to do because your mind says go do it, or because some teacher said this is the next step, right? Only make those leaps of faith when you're in the present moment, tuned in, and you have a clear channel with the divine, because that's when you're going to know if that leap of faith is going to be supported or if that leap of faith is going to be a world of hurt.
So Chris, you know, we were talking for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. We're on 40 minutes. And there's a couple of things I'm glancing at the comments.
Oh, yeah?
I wanted to talk about. And number one, they're asking you to repost the 40-day link.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I can do that. There. So, but there's something very special that's happening here. And there was a comment from Jennifer that I wanted to talk about. So this 40-day journey that I did, it's interesting because typically it's in this evergreen, so you can go in there and you can take it and begin it whenever you want. And that's what I did. And you take it alone in the privacy of your own home, right? But you have Lisa as this guide and all the energy and stuff behind it. And it's so much of it is an undoing. Like you're really asked to sit with all these beliefs and let it go. And there are moments within that journey that can be very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And some people end up stepping back and walking away and coming back. What we're doing this time, and why I wanted to talk about it, is we're doing a group journey beginning March 6th, which is Wednesday. And it doesn't mean that we're all going to get together and talk about things every day. But, you know, the course teaches us, and we know that we're all one, right? Yeah. And we know that group intention, like, blows things away. You know, you can walk into an area where there's been loving, or, you know, you go to a concert, you go to a retreat center, or you go step into a war zone, and you can feel the intention, you can feel the energy of what's there. We have, you know, I don't even know what it is now, but there's over 500 people, and I'm hoping for hundreds more by Wednesday, that are all going to begin on this Wednesday to step through the journey together. There will be a number of us, hopefully all of us, that will sit at, you know, throughout the days of these 40 days and hold everyone that's going through that journey in love and with that intention that it be easy, that it be a release, that we all get to feel who we truly are. There isn't anything outside of us that we need. Most of what we need to do is just let go of our defenses, let go of the idea. The Course teaches that we hide guilt outside of us. You know, those things that we don't want to look at, we hide by putting them in our mother, brother, sister, political flow, whatever it is. We hide our guilt in our finances. And the course gently, I think, mostly helps, the 40-day helps us sit there and say, yeah, I don't need to hide it anymore. I don't need to fix it or solve it. It's not my job to do it. The Holy Spirit will do that for me. I just have to ask, and I ask by highlighting it. So we're going to do this all together. And I'll say it here. I haven't been saying it in any of the copy or in any of the invitations. We're starting on the 6th because the 6th is the first day of Lent. Mm. And so we're tapping into the energy of all those millions of people around the world that are entering their own 40-day journey, right? Because Lent is that period of time where Christians are asked to sit back and get quiet and think about who they are, and what their purpose is. And so we're not taking a church journey, we're not from scripture. This is not, it's not a, Course in Miracles is not a religious teaching along those lines by any stretch. And yet we're still tapping into the love that is going on in this 40-day Lenten journey with this 40-day journey of transformation. And I believe, and I know from reading the comments that we're not, there are people that have taken it, have taken it before.
Great.
So you can, if you've never taken it before, if you don't know the Course in Miracles, it will help transform you. If you've been through the course, the 40-day transformation, 2, 3, 4 times, it will take you to a new place. I'm feeling the energy building, Yeah,
well, spiritual development is very much like a spiral staircase. We go up the steps and we keep going up the steps and developing and growing and opening and letting go and all these parts of our process that ultimately are just returning us to the present moment. And we have a higher viewpoint when we look down and go, oh, okay, I could see who I was and where I was. And I can look up and go, I know where I'm going, and ultimately we're still in the same place. We're still in the same place, the present moment. We're just changing our viewpoints. And that's what I love about things like A Course in Miracles, the 40-day journey and things like that, is we're already perfect. We're not trying to change who we are. We're not trying to become something, get something. We're not even trying to grow. I think the word spiritual development that I just used can be a misnomer. Really, all we're trying to do is just be here now. And courses and programs, coaches, 40-day journey, all that stuff, the path that we're on is just a reference point, a viewpoint to go, okay, that's a viewpoint that helps me get back to here, right now. Confession, I actually stepped out of the present moment just a couple moments ago with you because, there was that question about, can you repost the link? And I was having trouble reposting the link on Facebook and I was kind of distracted for a minute. So, for those who are, reading the comments, hopefully it's there. If you're still listening, I'll just tell you the URL and maybe somebody can type it in, which is themiracles.store/40 and then days, 40 days, all lowercase, themiracles.store/40 days. If someone can type that in the comments below, that would be great because I closed Facebook. I was getting totally distracted and I want to be here with you, Cyndi. This has been just a wonderful journey and I feel like we could easily talk for hours and I have a hunch this won't be the last time that we get on here and have some fun this way, even though it's the first time we've actually done something like this live. In closing, as we wrap up, because I'm actually getting hungry, my body in the moment is saying it's lunchtime, Chris. Let's get this going.
We may be cut off. I was thinking 10, 15 minutes, so I'm pretty sure I have only set this up to go an hour, starting at 10 to 2, so we might be cut off in 30 seconds.
Alrighty. Well, in that moment, I'm just going to say thank you so much, Cyndi, for joining us. It's been a pleasure to share you with our community, share your experience, your wisdom, your journey. and so wonderful for me to play with you in this new way over the decade that we've known each other and played in different ways to play this way now. So thank you so much for sharing your path, your journey. I hope people join the 40-day journey. It's a fantastic experience. It's free. And it's one of the best offerings you're going to get for a free transformational experience anywhere. And that's, like you said, because, you know, Lisa and the foundation, they're here to serve. They're here to change the world. And they know that for their particular calling, their particular way of showing up, the way Spirit's showing up through them particularly, a nonprofit makes the most sense. And I'm so glad that you're now working with them and that we get to play with the Course in Miracles, which we didn't, you know, when we first met for the first 8 or 9 years. We get to play in a new way. So this is fantastic.
You know, if you want us to do this again, just say so in the comments section.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, write in the comments below. If you want more with Cyndi and I, let us know, and we'll see what we can do to make this happen. Any last quick parting words before we jump off?
You know, just essentially, like, Chris, I love you. I love this. I can feel the energy of this. And I'm getting teary because really I'm reconnecting again. You know, what is our ultimate purpose? But to join in love, right? And I think that's what we're doing. So thank you.
Yep. Wow. In closing, light shall be my guide today.
Oh yeah.
That is it. You know, it's here for a reason. This is here to remind me every single day at my desk what is real. That's all we're talking about today. Light being our guide, the moment, the present moment. So thank you so much for being a light today for myself and for our community, Cyndi. And I look forward to playing with you again next time.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I love your shirt.
Thank you.
I saw that comment. Okay, bye everyone.